Last week, I posted a video about camping food, and I promised that this week would be part 2 where I'd show you how to make some of the things I packed. Well, today is the day, making good on my promise. The 3 things I'm going to show you how to make are some of my favorite things to take camping: dehydrated kale, fruit leather, and fish jerky made from tilapia. All super easy, perfect for camping, and making them yourself can save a lot of money. As for the time involved, I usually take a weekend in spring or early summer and make a whole season's worth. Some years I even have a little left over that I can either eat during the off-season or put in the freezer for next year. Now, obviously, to make dried food, you need a food dehydrator, which will pay for itself many times over, and if you're a gardener, even more so. I've had this Nesco Garden Master for so long I don't even remember what I paid for it. I've seen them for as low as like $75-ish and $150 on the outside, and I think there are some models out there that are as low as like $40-ish bucks, but I have no idea as to the quality. This particular one has been running like a champ for at least a decade. Let's start with the kale. And the reason I make my own is because for some reason I can never find unflavored kale chips at the grocery store. And I don't want like Cool Ranch flavored kale. I just want kale. I make pieces about this big, put them on the tray, make sure they have plenty of room around them so that they dry evenly. I'm going to make 2 trays. This is going to last me at least 1 camping season. And if you put these in an airtight container and put that in the freezer, these will last for well more than a year. So I'm going to do this out on the patio because, believe it or not, dehydrating kale actually is kind of stinky. It smells sort of like burning pumpkin or an old jack-o'-lantern. So it's not horrible, but I don't want to smell up the house, so I'm doing it out here on the patio. I'm going to do this in 2 stages. I don't think the camera's going to get a very good shot of this because LEDs kind of strobe up when you film them, but I'm setting this for 145 degrees. I'm going to run it for 1 hour, and then I'm going to come back in an hour and turn down the temperature and do the second phase. Okay, so it's been an hour, and yes, again, I know that you really can't read this because it's strobing out on the camera, but I've reduced the temperature to 115, and I'm setting it for 3 hours, and we're going to let her rip. Okay, and 3 hours later, let's open her up. It looks like, you can tell just by the way they sound and feel. But just so I can demonstrate, I brought this dish, and if I just crunch that up, you'll hear it crunch and see, just completely bone dry. These are going to last me a long time, and they're delicious. I mean, you just eat them like this if you want. Yummy. Next, let's do the fruit leather. If you do decide to try these, I think you should do them in this order because that way you won't have to wash the racks in between dishes. If we had started with the fish, then everything after that would smell and taste like fish. The kale, on the other hand, is so dry that it's not going to leave any lingering odor or flavor that could throw our fruit leather. I'm going to do my favorite, blueberries. And I'm going to start by filling up my NutriBullet blender cup all the way to the top with frozen blueberries, and then put that in the fridge overnight. Yes, that is way above the fill line, but as these thaw out, they'll settle and we'll be fine. Okay, it is the next day, and as you can see, the blueberries have kind of shrunk down to this level. I'm going to add a little splash of water before I blend them because that makes a little stiffer, more brittle fruit leather. And now we're going to blend that up for about 30 seconds. This is, of course, video magic, so I'm not going to make you sit there and watch the whole 30 seconds because I'm a nice person. In fact, I'm so nice that I have removed the audio from this section so that you don't have to listen to the blender. Now, you can do this with other frozen fruits like strawberries here. Just be aware that different fruits will need different drying times. Now, your dehydrator should have come with a little sheet like this. I'm going to spray a bit of oil on it and then spread it with a paper towel. We just want a very thin coating to keep the leather from sticking. Now I'm going to pour my puree as evenly as I can on the tray. The thinner your puree, the more evenly it'll spread,
and you'll probably end up with a stiffer, more brittle leather, which is what I personally like, but that's up to you. Just make sure that it's not actually moist because you don't want it to get moldy. And again, I know you can't really see this, and as I've said, the run times and even the temperatures can vary a little depending on the thickness or thinness of your puree. But a good starting point is probably 145 degrees for 8 hours. The tricky part is that you probably don't want to interrupt the cooking cycle. No peeking. If you start and stop, it seemed to me like that keeps it from drying properly, and that's why there can be a little trial and error to this dish. But don't be afraid to get it wrong because frankly, you'll get to eat your mistakes, and that ain't all bad. After about 8 hours, or if your puree was really thin, maybe 7 hours, open it up, flip it over, and then give it another 15 minutes to make sure the other side gets dried off a little too.
This one turned out perfect, so I'm just going to roll this up and I'll be done. Now, if I just roll this up as is, it's going to stick to itself and become a big, unmanageable, basically inedible mass. So I'm going to roll it up into a piece of parchment paper like this. Put it right on top like that. I make a little lip. And then roll it up like this. And there it is. Now this will last in the outdoors for several days, but not indefinitely. So I'm going to put this in the fridge until the day I take off, because otherwise it actually can get a little moldy if you leave it out long enough.
Now we're ready to move on to my favorite, the fish jerky. In this video, I'm using tilapia, which is really kind of my go-to. You can also use probably really any fish. Salmon is delicious, but it's fattier, which means it's messier and it has more odor. The tilapia is nice and tidy and can keep in an airtight container in the freezer for months and months, though the biggest challenge with that is resisting the temptation to just eat it. It's a fantastic snack. A little salty, but that's a good thing when you're camping. You'll see in this video in a moment, but the marinade I use is soy sauce, liquid smoke, mirin cooking wine, salt, white pepper, and black pepper. You can use pretty much any spice blend you want, and I have certainly played around with that, but for the purposes of this video, I'm just showing you the most basic starting point, and I guarantee you will not be wanting for flavor. This batch turned out delicious.
The first step in making the fish jerky is cutting the fish into little bite-sized pieces. I'm only going to make 2 fillets worth today because I have a lot left over from last year. So you're basically going to cut this in a way that the fish will dry out nice and evenly, and also you're looking for bite-sized pieces. I start with a cut right down the middle. And I'm going to cut these at an angle. And I'm looking for pieces about like that. Now bear in mind that we're also going to be putting these on the rack in the dehydrator. So we want them large enough that they don't fall through, but we want them small enough that they dry out pretty well. Okay, fast motion. When I get to these end pieces, I try to just cut them this way. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but they're too small to cut vertically. And now I've ended up with 2 nice pieces that are about the same size and shape as all the rest of them. And as I go, I'm going to put these in a little snap top. I'm doing this as I go because I want to put my seasonings in here on each layer. Now, I kind of eyeball this. The first thing I put is liquid smoke. And then I follow that up with some soy sauce. Trying to get that even on there. And then a little splash of mirin, Japanese cooking wine. And now I'm going to do some white pepper, black pepper, oops, and salt. I'm going to do this off camera because otherwise it'll be kind of messy. So white pepper, black pepper, and salt. Now it should go without saying that this recipe is not written in stone. If there's anything in here that you don't think you like or you think you'd like to experiment with, have at it. Some people like sugar. I don't use sugar. I think the mirin has plenty of sweetness. I've put garlic in here before too, and that's nice. Okay, so now I'm doing my second layer. As you might guess, like I said, the reason I'm doing this in layers is because if I just did one big layer, the spices wouldn't be on anything except the top layer. I'm going to put this in the fridge for a minimum of 6 hours. This has been marinating. It's ready to go. I always start with taking the fruit tray and putting it on the bottom because the fish jerky is going to drip, and this is going to contain a lot of those drippings. Then I take a second tray, and most dehydrators come with it's like a mesh plastic, and this works well for jerky because the smaller pieces can sometimes fall through these holes. This is easier, and it does contain some of the drippage. So back to the land of fast forward motion, and let's load this up with fish pieces. And just as I was placing this on the tray, I realized that I forgot a step. I usually like to put a thin coat of oil on the tray. Totally forgot to do that. But you know what? We're going to just go with it and cross our fingers and hope for the best. So put on the lid. I'm going to let this go at 160 degrees for 8 hours. Okay, 8 hours later, let's open it up. It looks fantastic. I'm going to take a little piece. Actually, I don't want to eat too big of a piece because I don't want to hog it all. Let's take a little taste test. Oh, it's perfect. Absolutely perfect. And as far as the mess, we saved a lot of drips from hitting the bottom of the tray. So, worth it. Success. I should probably talk about all the plastic bags. For somebody who is always talking about the environment and that sort of thing, I sure do have a lot of plastic bags in my beer vault. Well, here's the thing. They're really easily reused. If you need to, you can wash them out, although with this quinoa dish, I just tap out the dust and reuse them. Many of them are on their 4th or even 5th use. This one, as you can see, is pretty well worn. And this one, on the other hand, is brand new, but not for long. So, reuse.
Another thing I promised last week was some footage of these actual things being actually eaten out in the actual nature, so here we go. I did end up using the Snow Peak on my trip, and it's a great stove, but I found out since then that Jetboil has come out with a new stove called, I think, the Zip, and it's a little smaller. Looks like it would fit fine in a bear canister. It might just be the stove of my dreams. I almost bought one, but then decided that I am too cheap to spend the money. So, I don't know, maybe if we do a part 3 or we talk about camping food again next year, I'll buy it.
Okay, day one, technically a driving day. We found a kind of an itinerant campsite, and I said last week that I was going to show these new instant camping meals that I've never tried before. The brand is Farm to Summit Green Chili Cheddar Grits. I'm going to cook this up. I'm going to use the jet boil because it boils water the fastest, and let's see how they do. All right, I filled my bag with 1 1/4 cup of boiling water, and I am finding one small, very minor annoyance, which is that the bag is not flat-bottomed. It doesn't want to stand up by itself, so I have to lean it up against a rock. Not the worst thing in the world, especially considering that this package is compostable and biodegradable, so that's a big plus. So I'm going to wait 5 minutes, and then I will get to eat my green chili and cheddar grits. Alrighty, it's been about 10 minutes. I always let these things go longer than they say. And it's time for the moment of truth. Little soupy, little loose. It's reasonable. It's okay. I mean, I'd almost say good. Camping food is assy. And this is not assy. It's edible, which is a far cry better than most camping food. So there you have it. This one didn't actually get eaten on the trip, so I'm going to eat it here at home. This is the same brand as the grits. It's Farm to Summit Puebloan beans and rice. I'm going to make it up and see how it tastes. Well, alrighty then. Thanks to Video Magic, 18 minutes later, I've opened it up. I gave it a little shake and a little stir, and it looks pretty good. Let's take a little taste. There is my 11 spoonful of Puebloan beans and rice, which just by coincidence, I purchased just before my trip to Mesa Verde, which is, as you may know, an ancient Puebloan site, so kind of appropriate that I'm appropriating their culture. So I'll take a little taste off camera and let you know what I think. That's good. Yeah, 2 thumbs up. Okay, so Farm to Summit brand, having tried 2 of their varieties, I have to say, they're pretty good and reasonably priced, and they're made here in Colorado. So I'm going to give these guys a stamp of approval. If you would like me to do more reviews of camping food, just let me know in the comments field, and I'll happily do that because you know what? I love to eat. That'll be fun.
But for now, it's time to wrap up this video. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you next time. Ciao.